Max. Good morning, everyone. It's the Bear Facts with Ross Pollard again. I don't know why I'm telling you this. We've had some technical difficulties this morning due to my low intellect in technology, but thankfully Danielle has helped me fix that up. We have with us Danielle Matthews coming from America. I'm only going to give a very brief introduction because she's such an interesting lady. I'm going to let her do the talking. She has come from a place which is very nasty. And a lot of the other podcasts that we've done, we've spoken about extraordinary people that have been involved in trauma. We're speaking to someone today who is an extraordinary person. Unfortunately, she was on the other side of the fence. Danielle, welcome to the Bear Facts. Thank you so much for making the effort to be with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad we got the tech stuff figured out. You did great.
Danielle, I don't think this is going to be an easy listen for some people. Can you tell us about the event that has basically led to how your life has been formed, and obviously a very successful life, but can you take us back to what happened?
Absolutely. You know, my life it went upside down when I was 23. At the time, I had graduated from college. I'd gotten a degree in biology. I was doing a program here in the US. It's called Teach for America. So you go and you teach in a low income area, somewhere rural or urban. And so I had been placed in Colorado, which was a dream for me because I was a big snowboarder. And I was teaching kids during the week. I was snowboarding on the weekends. And it was like, that was my dream. I was so happy. During a summer break, I went home to visit family, and I went out at night to celebrate a friend's birthday, got up very early the next morning to go meet my parents to go to a wedding. And as I was on my way out of the city, a gentleman had been out drinking all night and passed out while driving and came into my lane and just smashed my car head on. We hit, headlight to headlight. And at the time, that morning, I didn't understand that my life had changed. I was actually able to walk away from the accident, thankfully, because we hit head on. The car took the impact and my physical body externally looked fine. Even when the paramedics came to the scene, they didn't even take me in. They just said, "You're in shock." Because I kept saying to them, "I'm out of it. Like, I don't feel right." I couldn't figure out how to call my parents. I had somebody else make the phone call, and everyone was just saying, "Oh, you're in shock. You're in shock." I'd never been in an accident before. So I thought, okay, this is shock. I guess that's what it feels like. Yeah. You're kind of dazed. And
what were the speeds the cars were doing? Was it on a highway?
I was coming out of a city. And so we were on a one-way each way, parallel parked cars. I think the speed limit was probably around 35, 40. He was coming down a little bit of a hill. I would guesstimate he was going around 45. And I was going the speed limit when I saw him coming. This happened so fast, but it's amazing because I remember moment to moment, I saw his line, the tire cross the midline, and I thought, oh, he's turning. And then he didn't turn. And I thought, oh, maybe he's swerving around something. And then I look in the lane and there was nothing there. And I looked up at the driver to be like, what are you doing? And I saw him just passed out, head slumped on his shoulder. And at that point, I had taken my foot off the gas, but not really been braking because I didn't anticipate what was about to happen. And so, the cars hit, and with that amount of speed going into it, my brain it sloshed within my skull and it hit my skull. And so I ended up having a traumatic brain injury because of that. And it was an internal. It wasn't because of anything external hitting my head. It was because of the speed with which we hit and then stopped.
So, and just for our listeners in Australia, so you said 35, 45, but but that's so we're looking at sort of between 60 and 70 Ks an hour. But I think what we forget is if both cars are doing that, the combined force is 140 K an hour. And you're completely right. Regardless of the car that you're in, there are two collisions, aren't there? There's the collision with the two vehicles and the body with the vehicle, but then there's the collision of the organs against the skeleton, which we forget about at times. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, you're fine. I mean, important to talk about. And I forgot that, my first car was kilometers per hour. I bought a car from Canada, the first car I ever purchased. So I usually can convert, but I wasn't.
No, but that's, it's a significant force, as you say. So I can't believe you weren't even taken into hospital.
I know, it's kind of wild. Like since my injury, actually, and we'll talk more obviously, but just as a note, I would go and speak to paramedics, to first responders, and I'd share my story because a lot of them were appalled. They said, look, just looking at the vehicle, if I'd have come onto the scene and seen the vehicle the way that it was, like just completely totaled, every airbag, gone off, all of that, it wouldn't have been a choice. You would have had to been taken in. And I have no idea if paramedic was new. I have no idea. And anyway, my parents, when they came to the scene, my mom was like, something's wrong. Like, moms know. And she said, you're not acting normal. And I said, I know, I'm really out of it. And they took me to a urgent care. And again, this urgent care person missed it also. She said the same thing. She said, you're just in shock. She gave me like something for inflammation, because they said, you're going to have whiplash and your muscles are going to be sore. But that was it. They kind of sent me home and said, you'll be fine. And in the weeks that followed, I was feeling crazy because I would look in the mirror and I looked like this. Like I looked completely normal, but I couldn't concentrate. I would get exhausted if I tried to. All I wanted to do was sleep. When I had any sort of input coming in, so light, like natural light, it felt like, that's why I can describe it, is it felt like somebody had a flashlight and they were just shining it like directly in my eye. And that's what natural light felt like. Like it just was so overwhelming. And we put blackout fabric in my bedroom. I mean, I couldn't handle it. And same with noise. I heard everything. Like I heard the air conditioner at the same level that I heard somebody talking, that I heard like the knife and fork on the plate. Like it all came in and it just sounded like this cacophony of noise.
Were you more highly agitated? To think
yeah.
You wouldn't normally?
I don't mention that often. I'm glad you asked that. My mom always says my filter was gone.
Yeah.
So because everything was so much, I was constantly overstimulated. So I was agitated. So in a conversation with someone, I was very blunt, very quick to the point. Like I'd cut people off because I'm like, I couldn't take it. Like, and if they weren't understanding what I was saying, like, yeah, I would get angry quickly, which is not my personality, like at all. So, and above all that, I was very dizzy. I couldn't sleep on one side because when I would turn on that side, I felt like the room was spinning, and I had migraines. I think the worst part was the pounding in my head. I mean, it felt like somebody had a vice grip and was just like squeezing my head, and it was relentless, So I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. From like 8 years old, I did competitive swimming, and I've always like pushed myself, and like you get injured in sports and you kind of just like, you make it work. Yeah. And so that part of me had kind of kicked in, like just trying to push through, like, all right, it'll go away. Like, we just got to get through these days. And then it became very clear it wasn't going anywhere. So I went to my primary care doctor and he referred me on to a neurologist. And that's when they gave me the diagnosis of a mild traumatic brain injury.
How far along did you deal with these symptoms before you went and saw these doctors?
It was a couple of weeks before the primary care, and then I couldn't get into the neurologist, right? Because they're like, backed out. So it was a month from the time that my accident happened to the time that I saw the neurologist was a month. And thankfully, I didn't have a brain bleed. I didn't have something more serious, because if I had, I mean, everyone would have missed it. I would be in worse shape than I am. But for that reason, I was classified with a mild TBI, which I've always said is an oxymoron because there was something mild about it. But the doctor was telling me with brain injury, a lot of people end up in comas. They end up with a brain bleed. They need to relearn how to talk, how to walk. I mean, I was blessed that I didn't have those things. However, I said to them, I said, well, what do you do with someone like me? Because I can't function in the world. Like I can't interact with people. I'm overstimulated just leaving my bedroom, and they said, well, honestly, we try to get people to your point, and we don't have anything for you to do. It'll just naturally clear up if it's going to clear. And that was what, the kind of prognosis was. They said, give it 3 months. It should go. So I went on a medical leave from work. And at that point, we reached into, other health and wellness professionals and started doing things like hyperbaric oxygen treatments, neurobiofeedback. I changed my diet completely. I ate a ton of fat, a ton of protein, supplemented, omegas, B12, all that stuff. And my 6 weeks of medical leave, like nothing changed. I was still awful and ended up losing my job because I couldn't perform, and having to move back in with my parents and just focus fully on trying to get well. And unfortunately, at 3 months, they said to me, maybe it'll be 6 months. At 6 months, they said maybe at a year. And at my 1 year appointment, my neurologist literally said to me, Danielle, with this type of injury, the body's done all the healing it will do. And this is just your new normal. And you need to shape your life around your symptoms, and you need to move on.
So can I just say at that point, so you've got, it's actually more than what you've got there, isn't it? Because you've had to move home. No one wants to do that. You've lost your income. And how hard was it for you mentally?
That was the worst part. I mean, the independence piece, because 23, like you're just getting out, into the world. It's like super exciting. I had painted the perfect picture of what I wanted my life to look like. It was looking like that. And all of a sudden, my identity honestly was gone, because I had identified myself as the snowboarder, the teacher, the high performer, the person that does good in their community. Like that was Danielle. And all of a sudden, all those things were ripped away from me. And I was left having no idea what my future would look like, because I couldn't even plan out an hour from now. There's no way I was planning out like any sort of future work. And so I would get very anxious. Anytime I would think about the future, I would have a panic attack. I would literally go numb. I would just hyperventilate. I would soak a t-shirt from just tears. It was intense. And the depression was really bad. I think with brain injury, like emotional dysregulation happens because of the injury. But situationally, like you hit the nail on the head, having lost my independence, having lost who I thought I was, I was severely depressed. And when that doctor said that to me, it was a big reality check for me, because number one, something inside of me said, he's wrong, you're going to heal. Like something, just my higher self was like, don't take that in. That's not truth. However, a part of me went, okay, but if the physical stuff isn't going away anytime soon, like we have got to deal with this mental, emotional stuff, because it was not a life worth living, to wake up miserable, to not be able to do anything, to just be feeling like a victim, which was really how I was feeling. Like I had no power in the situation, that there was nothing I could do, that it shouldn't have happened. Like, as valid as maybe those thoughts were, they left me feeling very disempowered and not in a healthy state of mind. And so,
and then what about friendships and relationships as well? I'm sure they were all very difficult too.
You ask good questions. So that is something I don't talk about much, and I probably should share more. A lot of my friendships disappeared. So this group of people that I had been friends with out in Colorado didn't call, didn't text, like nothing. It was just, and I was in therapy at the time, and my therapist, thank goodness, he said to me, Danielle, this has nothing to do with you. He said, it is hard for people to watch someone go from having it all to having it all taken. And he said, as people get close to that, they don't know what to say to you, and it scares them because it could happen to them. And so they don't want that in their world. And so they're just shutting off. And he said, it's not
a mirror they don't want to look into, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Because it was a big dose of reality. Like tomorrow's not guaranteed. Like I will never unknow that. And I could have lost my life that morning. Thankfully, I did not, and I've been able to learn a lot of lessons from it. But I will say there was a core group of people, a handful of friends that were everything. I had one friend in particular that when I moved home, he threw a surprise party for me. And he said, I want you to know that you're loved, and that there are people here that love you. Even if you're not out in Colorado doing all the things you dreamed of doing, you have people here. Because my parents still lived where I grew up. So high school friends and all of that were still around, and some of my college friends. And that friend in particular, he would come over and he would just sit with me in a dark room. He would play a game with me. Like he wouldn't mind, the explosive emotional stuff that was going on. And a true blessing. I mean, that man could call me at any point, at any time in my life, and I would drop anything, when someone shows up for you in that way. And I had another friend that the same thing, she would come over and, she'd cook with me, like she'd sit and just be. And that's what I needed, because I couldn't do much.
Well, I suppose at those times you don't always want someone to talk to you or pep you up, do you? You just want some company, someone just to be there with you and let you be
Exactly.
how you're going to be.
Yeah, because it wasn't helpful when people were saying, like, I think people thought it was helpful to say, I'm so sorry for you. Or the worst thing that people said to me was, well, Danielle, you look fine. And I'm like, I know I look fine. I'm not fine. Like, I wish that I had a cast or like some obvious signal, that it wasn't okay, but there was no visible signal. My parents know me well, and those couple of friends started to pick up that my eyes, like you could see it in my eyes would get kind of yellowy and like glossed over, that like glassy look when you're sick. My eyes had that look. So people that knew me well were like, oh, like you're not okay. But the average person, what's wrong with her? Why isn't she working? I even had some relatives like, you need to get back to work. Like you're just milking this. And it's like, no, I'm not. Like, I can't handle life right now.
Yeah. So I don't mean to skip over the nastiness, but I really want to hear more about how you said, no, this is not how it's going to be for me. What did you do and how did you move forward, and how did you get to where you are now today as such a success?
Yeah. It's several pieces. And it was slow. It wasn't like some big switch, but it started out with me realizing that I actually had control over my thoughts, which maybe doesn't sound like a massive realization, but for me it was. I didn't realize that there was a piece of me that was there before, during, and after any thought. And as I had more and more time by myself, I started to witness these thought patterns that would come up, the thoughts that would lead to a panic attack, the ones that were leading to depressed thoughts. And I was like, why am I allowing myself to think this? And what could I think that would actually be helpful? And so it was through, I call it mind control. It was literally just taking control and saying, no, like this isn't helpful, gone. Like we're not going to allow it. We need to replace it with something new. And I just didn't allow myself to think about the future. I didn't allow myself to think about the past. And I just said, okay, in this present moment, right here, right now, what could I do that could make me happy? And I just started to look for things that could potentially bring me joy, rather than focusing on all the things I couldn't do or, no longer had. It was like, well, what can I do? And what could this be opening up for me?
So retraining your thoughts.
Yeah, 100%, retraining my thoughts.
I've just finished an audio book and I'm listening to it again. Does the name Joe Dispenza?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know his work well. I didn't then. I know his work really well now, though.
Okay. So Joe Dispenza, a famous psychologist who talks about how we can change our lives with different thoughts, and he talks about quantum physics. But you didn't listen to a book or read a book. You decided just to do this yourself.
Yeah, it was out of pure necessity. I mean, I was contemplating not wanting to be on this earth, and it was like, well, that's not a decision I'm going to make. I'm going to stay here. So how do I make it a comfortable place to stay? You know, and I didn't have answers to the physical stuff. We were still looking. But I thought, well, the mental, emotional side, I have control over. And there's an equation. I like to think about it now. This is what I did. At the time, I didn't realize what I was doing, but you've got the external world plus your internal response. That is what actually equals your reality. And my internal response to the accident, to the injury, to everything had been one for a while of feeling like a victim, feeling like it wasn't fair, being angry, resentful. And so my reality was miserable.
Yeah.
When I shifted my inner response and I said, okay, there's just new rules on life. So now what can I do? What could bring me joy? I started to just reprogram how I was interacting and being with the injury. And I started to find things like, well, I could hang out with my grandparents and I could talk to them in a dark room and they didn't mind. And they let me come hang out at their house for, a while. And I started to just do things that had I been working, I never would have had time to do. Take the dog on a walk, cook a new recipe, read a book. And those things, as I started to do them and find joy, and I wasn't thinking about the past and I wasn't thinking about the future and I was present. I mean, every spiritual practice, what do they tell you? Be in the present moment. And again, I didn't know at the time what I was doing, but out of necessity, I was being incredibly present. And I tell you what, it was like magic, because all of a sudden I was in a space of gratitude and my family relaxed. They were like, oh, Danielle's going to be okay. They were seeing this shift in me, which made them feel like it was okay. And then everybody was just, it wasn't like, oh, Danielle's this delicate thing. And it was like, oh, she's all right. She's dealing with stuff. We'll figure out migraines.
So you've changed your reality. So as you say, we all look back, we all look forward, and we waste a lot of time and we forget about the now, don't we?
Yeah.
And there's a famous guy in Australia, Murray Masrick, who talks about, he actually walks, he goes, here I am, this is the present. And then he walks forward, he goes, now here's the present. And you also, I think, explained very well then, or articulated very well, that your energy changed, didn't it? So people around you noticed it as well.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things that I started to learn, and that's why, you can see it, I've got this like yin yang behind me and it's got the tree of life in it. I started to realize that there is a flow, and there's up and down, there's dark, there's light, there's love, there's hate, there's both. And in the dark times in life, like where I very much was at this stage, I realized this is the inner work. Like you see the roots of the tree, this is the stuff that has to happen to ground you. And I knew there was some inner knowing in me that was like, you're going to get better. I didn't know what life was going to look like, but I just knew I was going to get better. And that's what's happened. And when I shifted my internal state, it was like, I think that life is always offering us lessons in the form of challenges, problems, obstacles, triggers. To me, that's life saying, hey, you need to learn a lesson right now. And once you learn it, we're going to level up. We're going to go to the next phase. It's like a test. And I believe that my accident was meant to teach me to be present, to be grateful for what I have, what's in front of me, to learn that I am more than my thoughts and that I can create my world from the inside out. And once I learned that lesson and my vibrational state shifted, I attracted in the answer to my physical challenges. And it came through a phone call from a friend of my mom's. And she was an acupuncturist. It was wild. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I can see it now because I've studied more and I understand what I was doing. But at the time, it was just what made sense for me, right? It was the next step I feel like I had to take. And that answer was something called redox signaling. It's over in Australia. It's here. A company called ASEA makes it. And this woman, she was an acupuncturist, and she said to my mom, I've started using this with all my clients in the practice. And she said, some of them have digestive issues. It's repairing their guts. Some of them have hormonal issues. It's balancing their hormones. And she said, it basically goes in and helps the body figure out where there's damaged cells and signal repair. And she said, I believe it would pass the blood-brain barrier and could help Danielle. And so my mom, she's like, yes, she just intuitively was like, yes, let's do it. I was more skeptical, interestingly enough. I think I had gotten to this space where I was happy, and I was a little scared to hope that there was actually something that could fix the physical thing, because I had been hoping for over 2 years and nothing had. So I wasn't as keen on it. I actually didn't jump right in. It took about 6 months for me to say yes to it. Eventually I did. And within 3 months of using it, 90 days in, my migraines stopped. They had been relentless since the day of my accident. And it was like, holy cow, this was the only thing I had changed. And I'd been plateaued for, a year. And as I stayed on it, light sensitivity went away. Noise sensitivity went away. I was able to start working out again. I fully got my health back. And I then had a decision to make, what do I want to do now that I can go back out into the world? And the number one thing was financial independence. I was deeply scarred, is it really the only way I can say it, is like that the reality of like, if you don't have your health, you can't work. And so I didn't want to go back to like a 9-to-5 job where it was dependent upon my physical presence to earn money. Up to that point in my life, that's all I knew. You know, I went to a top university. I was trained how to be a good employee, get a good job. So I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I knew I wanted that.
Yeah.
And I also knew I wanted to have purpose in my work, and that in any given day, it needed to be something that, you know, made me happy and also was helping other people, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. And interestingly enough, you know, again, my mom saw it before I did. She said, Danielle, that company is ASEA. They're a biotech company. She said, but they're coming to market through word of mouth. And so people have to buy it from someone. And she said, why don't you share that? I was like, I'm not doing sales, Mom. No. And she said, I see it for you, Danielle. And like she did, she saw it crystal clear. And she said, come meet the company. So I met the founder of this company. I heard him speak. He talked about this children's book. And it's amazing. I've got it on my bookshelf here. It's so good. It's called The Three Questions. It's a Leo Tolstoy story.
Right.
And it's this little boy asking all these animals, like, when's the best time to do things? Who's the most important one? What's the right thing to do? And at the end of the story, like, this wise turtle tells him, look, the best time to do things is now. Be in the present. And the most important one is the one in front of you. And the right thing to do is whatever is best for them. And this founder, his name's Tyler Norton of this company, he said, that's how I conduct my life. And that is what I teach here. And I was like, this man gets it. Like, that is the essence of how to live a good life. Be present, give to those in front of you, do what's right for those in front of you. And I thought, if he's teaching that, what else could I learn from him? And and I walked into this, and 8 years later, I've helped thousands of people with their health. I've grown an organization that's international. We did 2.2 million in sales last year. It's like, it's wild to think of what's unfolded, you know.
Can you tell me a little bit about the product and the process that helped you and what you now promote?
Yeah, so it's redox signaling. There's a liquid and a gel. And it's really interesting because your body makes this. If you think about our bodies, we're like a sack of saline. Okay, our cells are sacks of saline. We cry salty, we sweat salty. And the body is very smart. It uses sodium and chloride and hydrogen and oxygen, right, from salt and water as the building blocks to make a lot of different molecules. So it'll take, like, for example, water is H2O. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. So we get another oxygen in there, a very different molecule, very different function. And so your body is doing this chemistry within you all the time, you know, taking these building blocks. And so this company did the same thing. They took the same root ingredients, salt and water, and have been able to break apart the bonds and reformulate and make these reductants, which have a negative charge. They've got an extra electron, and oxidants, which have a positive charge. They can gain an electron. And the term is redox. It just stands for reductants and oxidants. So why is that important? Well, your body, that's how every cell in your body talks. It's through electron transfer. It needs these reductants and oxidants to make the communication happen. And you're just trillions of cells, and they all work because they signal. And as you get older, you make less of your own redox molecules. They're made in the mitochondria. That gets less efficient after puberty. And so about every decade, you got about 10% less. And it's like going from 5 bars of service on your cell phone to, like, 3, 2, 1, to the point where a call for help is going out and it's not heard. And so this is when we have something that becomes chronic, or a mutated cell that can become a tumor, because the communication wasn't there for the body to do what it's designed to do, right? Which is to repair and be in homeostasis. So this company, ASEA, they figured out how to create the same molecules outside the body so you can replenish your body's supply, which is phenomenal, because that means, like, it will go into my system and it will repair where I have damage. It's going to help my body find its damaged cells, which for me were in my brain. For others, it might be in their liver, in their lung, in their eye, in their pancreas. Like, it doesn't matter where the cell is. They all talk with the same redox molecules. And so in drinking this, and you drink between 4 and 8 ounces, which for you guys, that's like 120 and 240 mLs. Okay, so it's not much.
On a daily basis?
On a daily basis. Yeah. Half in the morning, half at night. And it just goes into your system and goes to work. They didn't when I first learned about it, but now they have a topical, which is pretty cool because the topical is more concentrated and you can tell it where to go. So let's say you have a bad shoulder. You can rub the gel right on the shoulder. And it's phenomenal what we see, right? It signals the body and you'll notice like range of motion, discomfort, like we watch these things happen, not to mention like your skin, right? Wrinkles, cellulite, like that's all just damaged cells. And so repairing that, you actually visibly see fresher, younger skin, and which is great, but that doesn't.
What about hair regeneration?
Yeah, so I've seen it. There's several friends of mine. They're actually YouTubers, and it's so funny because you can go back to their old shows and you can see, that it was going away and now it's coming back. It's exciting. To me, it's like it works with plants. It works with animals, like anything living. That it's redox is life. Like this potential, this energy exchange. Like that's how every living thing stays alive. If we didn't have redox, we'd be gone in seconds. And so you can do little experiments at home with plants, right? Watch the one stay more vibrant longer. Or for seedlings, you'll watch them grow faster. Like it's pretty cool.
So how do people access these products to trial them?
Yeah, you've got to do it through like a rep. So myself, like you can come and talk to me and I can get information to you. I work with a lot of doctors. We do Q&A calls. I'm all about education. To me, it's like, look, come get informed and then decide if this is right for you or not. And everything's made here in the US, but it's shipped globally. So things get to like you in Australia, they'd get to you, in the same week. So
what's the website, Danielle?
My website, I would say go to brainbodyself.com. And if you go to the body section of my website, lots of info on what this is.
So this isn't the full picture. What else do you do now, Danielle?
Yeah. So I've gotten really intrigued with spirituality and speaking and teaching and helping people to understand the bigger picture. I think that one of the things I went through and learned, obviously, was this physical aspect of health, this breakthrough of redox. And so I've spent 8 years sharing that, training on that. But along the way, I realized the gift that I had for speaking and to helping people connect with the side of themselves that they're not used to. I teach Yoga Nidra, which is a guided meditation, and help people to step away from their thoughts, right? Like I talked about, this is the most important thing in my journey, and learn to get in touch with their true self and to start inserting intention, inserting a new way of being and interacting with the world. And more recently, I've stepped into yoga therapy, which is a phenomenal practice that, again, I've really been drawn to yogic philosophy. I think that the yogis have been around for thousands of years. They've contemplated some pretty profound questions, and they've come out with a lot of tools that I find, in the West, we have great tools as well. But like what I love about something like yoga therapy, you go into the physical body and you follow sensation. And in doing that, what the yogis say is everything gets trapped in the body. If you have like a trauma, like I did, energy gets stuck. And that energy then can manifest into disease in the body if you don't process it. And so yoga therapy takes you in and helps you to get in touch with these sensations and release them. And it's profound what can come out of people in a very short amount of time. And it just allows the body then to re-regulate. And you don't have to go through the talk therapy. Like in the West, we have talk therapy. It is great to an extent. I think sometimes you can't solve the same problem with the mind that created it. And what the yogis say is, let's get the mind out of the way. Let's move into the energy of the system and the physical body and work there.
If you just look at day-to-day exercise, we use the body to help the mind, don't we?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. We're on to something with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, Danielle, could you please I'll put it in the show notes and also on Instagram and Facebook, but could you just let everyone know your website again, please, so people can access all this stuff?
Absolutely. And on the website, I've got a free guided meditation under the self section. You can do that, but it's brain, like your brain, body, and then self.com. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm super accessible. I love talking with people, especially if you've been through hard things. I put a big focus on post-traumatic growth, helping people grow through what they go through and seeing that it actually is a gift, that they are being asked to, it's test day. They're being asked to go through a challenging time. Just like what you said about the gym and working out, we know that doing hard things with our physical body makes us stronger. And I think somehow along the way, we forgot that life, the hard things in life, make us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually stronger. And
well,
that's something.
What's that saying? From pressure comes diamonds.
Yeah, exactly.
and I love watching him on Instagram and listening to him. Joe Rogan talks about any mental issues or any anxiety he has, it can all be dispersed of with hard enough exercise, because as you say, it's probably a little more brutal, but to remove your thoughts and completely focus on the physical it's just invaluable, isn't it?
It is. And it's like, these ancient teachings, like they figured some things out. And I think we kind of lost it along the way. And so bringing this back in, like physical exercise, it's a great thing to do, but even just being with the sensation, it's like it's just trying to be felt. It's like, I think we've all understood like those times when you want to cry, but it's like not the appropriate place or whatever, and you push it down and you feel like restriction in your throat,
hence the massive profits for alcohol companies.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We numb it, whatever we do. But the truth is, like, once you cry, you feel better. Like it needs to be felt. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, maybe a minute or two of intensity, but then it's gone. Versus if you don't let it, that intensity just builds and builds and builds. You got that in your system.
Danielle, I can't thank you enough for joining us on the Bare Facts. And as people have seen, a lot of the podcasts we've done, we've interviewed paramedics, helicopter pilots, and so we've looked at it from the one view of that sort of acute phase where an injury has occurred or a rescue has happened. But we don't often look at the other side, where someone, once they're discharged from hospital or after the incident, they then have to get their life back on track. And there is so much sadness and so much struggle. And I know your story. I really can't wait to share it with the podcast, with the Bare Facts community, because you are an extraordinary person and you give hope and inspiration, and we can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been quite hard to listen to, but very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking me to be on and, kind of shining light on the other side, because I imagine, with those professionals, it's like you're in and out of someone's life in a very precious moment of time. And the ripple effect, though, that goes forward from there, like those people will never go back to the life that they had before that trauma. You can't, but you can find beauty on the other side. And that's the light I hope to shine for people.
Danielle, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Danielle, I've just